but I'm finding what's happening now. It's like the market's really improving.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Price of houses in some areas are becoming more affordable. I wouldn't say they're coming down, but there's been some movement there. So it's a little bit more affordable. Rates a little more affordable, right? The workforce, unemployment down, right? So people have jobs and working everything. And so we're seeing an uptick in the market, for loan officers that are getting busier and busier with those that are
Yeah. Yeah.
prospecting, of course. If they're not prospecting, they're not getting busier, but those that are prospecting, they're
That's
they're
right.
getting busier, right? They're closing more loans. So the biggest thing I've been hearing lately is I'm feeling a little overwhelmed,
Mm.
which is a shift. Because
Yeah.
here, 9 months ago, it was like I'm feeling a little broke, like I'm feeling scared,
Yeah.
right? Which I've been there, man. I know how that feels. So I've been a little scared. I'm scared, but now it's gone from I'm scared to okay, all right, things are coming in. I got some loans closing. I've gone from 2 to 4. I've gone from 4 to 8, and I'm getting a little overwhelmed.
Mm.
So when somebody calls you, what's and I know we're talking like general, like there's all kinds of different situations, and I know you're great at talking with people about and evaluating this. But what would you say are some general principles? I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, Steve.
Hmm.
I'm doing my prospecting. I see all these great opportunities, and I get pulled back in the deal. Like what do I do with this?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. One of the things I just thought about is who can do this. So there's typically things
Mm,
on your plate that somebody else can help you with. And the first thing I would do is literally, one of the phrases I just keep hearing over and over and over again is the quality of my work right where it needs to be, or am I doing a lot of busy work? So it's quality
mm,
versus quantity. So it's looking at the calendar and seeing we do an acts of freedom and saying, okay, what am I doing? Is it the number one activity? And anything that's not the top one, two, or three things that move the needle, which is typically going to be your sales activity, who can do this? One of the first places I would start, Carl, it's uh, with all of the conversations I'm having, where most people get pulled into the pipeline
tell me.
is once it's it goes under contract, they RESPA disclosed it. Here's what I would challenge you to ask yourself. Once a loan has been handed off to the back end, how many hours a week are you touching a file once your back end loan partner or back end processor have it? And Carl, the number has been remarkably high. Like I'm hearing people say 5 hours, 7 hours, 15. I was talking to someone last week. Carl, it was like 22 hours a week. And it's the challenge is they're focusing on all these sales activities, which are moving the needle, bringing in the business. And yet, when the loan is being handed off to the back end, it's like, hey, I need you to chase down this condition. I need you to make sure you get with title and follow up with the survey and the title. And did we get it scheduled? And the borrower's non-responsive. And what I would encourage you to do is you got to look at your back end team and say, what does it take to make sure that when you hand a file off, you don't touch it unless two things happen. It doesn't qualify and you need to get involved to help restructure it, or it has to do with money. Let's say that the appraisal came in, it was a little bit lower than you thought, and now your LTV is higher, and now you got to talk about money. Those are the only two reasons any loan officer should be getting in to a file once it's been handed off. So Carl, it goes back to, is that number one thing taken care of? And here's how we do it over here. I found that, Carl, I found that it was hard to manage to 22 things. So there's really four things we manage our back end team with. Is number one, when a loan is RESPA disclosed, is it submitted in 72 hours? Why? Because if a loan is submitted in 72 hours, guess what? I didn't lose days on the back end, which means I'm more likely to hit my closing date. Number two, when a loan goes into underwriting, it needs five or less buyer conditions. Why? Because when a loan has 21 buyer conditions, not only do the underwriters not like you, it is a mess to get cleaned up. And so what it means is when your back end team gets notified, hey, disclosures have been sent, they've got to reach out to the buyers. They update the needs list, verify the information, submit a clean file in 72 hours. And then here's the other two things is, are your loans clear to close 3 days ahead of closing at a minimum? And are documents out 48 hours prior to closing? And I would encourage you, number one, when somebody says I'm overwhelmed, how dialed in is the back end team and how much time are you currently spending on the back end of the process? Because most people, if that were like set in stone and you had just a remarkable team that kept you out of the files, and instead of saying, that's not my job, they'd say, hey, go get more loans. We got this. And they're pulling it in. You would give yourself 5, 10, 15, 20 hours a week. That would be the first place I would start.
Wow, a lot of good stuff there, man.
Well, hey, you know what? Because I see we've got people, I've talked to some people too, Carl, where it's like I'm at 15, 16, 17, and I'll go back and say, how much time did you spend in the back end of the file? 5 hours this week. Wow. How do we get that at such a level where you spend less than 30 minutes in a pipeline meeting a week? And that's the number one thing you got to solve. And then once that's solved, there's some other things you can do on the front end, but I tend to find probably 85% of loan officers are still being pulled back into their file, regardless if they're doing 2 to 4 or they're doing 15 to 20 or 25. There still
Mhm.
tends to be, I'm being pulled back in, and we got to solve that first.
All right, man. There's almost like four different topics in just what that awesome little uh 2 minute monologue there. It was just fantastic, like some really good stuff. Um, let's start off with a couple of them here.
Okay.
So busy work. You know, the
Mm,
problem I often find is I'll defend my busy work,
talk
right?
about that.
Because, well, it's important to me,
Okay.
but it might not be important for my income. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
That yeah. And so let's talk about that here just for a few minutes. So help me, and and this is where we have to be brutally honest with people,
Yeah.
kind of, in a cool way, check our feelings at the door,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
leave our feelings and come in with an open mind and an empty whiteboard in front of us, like, all right, help me out with this. Like, you're in charge of a team that closes a lot of loans each month, and I'm feeling overwhelmed at 2 or 4 or even 10 or even 25 loans. I'm feeling overwhelmed,
Hmm.
and I see you and your team close much more than that, and you don't seem overwhelmed, right? You seem chill. um Help me identify what my busy work is. So, what would you say would be some classic, what you most often see busy work that feels important,
Yeah.
but probably isn't? And I get every there's always some outliers where it really is important, and like I get that, but generally speaking,
Yeah.
what's some busy work?
Hey, could I flip it a little bit? And instead of the busy work, could I focus on what's most important? And then you could feel the time
No,
or
no, let's. I like that. That's actually my next question.
okay.
So
Okay.
so let's talk about the busy work first.
Yeah, so I would say busy works is you've got, I think about things that are urgent versus what's important. So I get an interruption from my back end loan partner who is, they need me to go chase down a condition because they haven't heard back from the borrower and they need my help because they're being unresponsive. That's busy work, in my opinion. I think because look, everybody's got a vision for your life, even your back end team, even your processor, your loan partner. And sometimes it's easier for them to say, hey, Carl, I need you to follow up with this borrower this morning and go grab these 3 conditions to get your loan submitted back into underwriting. And most loan officers, because they care about the closing, they care about their processor, and they want to keep moving it forward instead of focusing on making my proactive outbound calls that actually brought in more of the business. You know what they'll do, Carl? Hey, sure, no problem. And this is, let's say it's at 10 in the morning, prime time to be making prospect calls. So, Carl, hey, no worries. Let me go just make a couple of calls and I'll get those documents for you. And they're totally derailed from what was the most important thing instead of what I just keep hearing is who can do this? How do I get overwhelmed? Who can do this? So when your processor says, hey, I need help, better yet, what if I coached my processor on what they're doing real quick to follow up so that they're empowered to go get the documents and communicate with the borrower on my behalf? Because I could coach them in 3 to 5 minutes versus taking 2 hours of trying to do it all myself. So to me, that's the busy work. We're easy to say, yeah, I'll go do it versus, hey, listen, let me ask you this. What would you need to make sure that you could get this done today? You
Mhm.
need coaching on any of the scripts. You need help with any of the process. What could I help, coach you with to make sure that you're able to, and you're fully empowered to make that decision?
Yeah. Good
So
stuff.
that'd be another. Here's emails. I watch people all the time. Ding, ding,
Oh,
ding. My
those email
phone ding.
notifiers.
Oh my gosh. Well, what happens is I just saw this approval came in. It's got three conditions, or I got an approval. The underwriter's wanting to suspend it because they don't have all the income documentation. And I was focused on the right activity, but this little notifier in the side of my computer said, you got another email. You got another text that just came in. And these are things that literally will distract you from what matters most. So, email, text. I think also when you're making your outbound prospecting calls, somebody besides you has to answer the phone. And I'll tell you this, somebody may say, "Well, I'm a lone officer by myself. How in the world could I make that happen?" Let me tell you what I was just talking with a friend of mine this week, and Carl, you know what he did? He hired a answering service that he forwards his phone so that when he's making his calls, when he's in a meeting, somebody in a very cool way for about $100 a month answers his phone, and he's not distracted from the most important thing. I read a study, and I think you and I we've talked about this, that every distraction that comes in, it takes you 10 to 15 minutes to refocus and reorganize your thoughts towards the activity you are currently working on. And I think when you've got an email that comes in, you got a phone call, you've got an emergency that popped up on a file, you've got inbound phone calls instead of having someone help answer the call. My gosh, Carl, that's 6 hours of your day right there. And yet I'm supposed to spend 2 hours prospecting. And oh, by the way, I've got three conditions my processor needs me to follow up with. And that closing that was supposed to happen tomorrow may not happen because we're not still clear to close because the back end team took 7 days to submit the loan because they were waiting on documents and didn't review the file until literally day 6. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
It
and by
does
the
sound.
way, I've got an industry event for the Mortgage Association, which is all good, but we're talking about somebody who says, I'm overwhelmed. How do I eliminate the busy work that gets you less results and focus on the only things that give me the biggest results? And that's where it goes back to, part of the way I would structure my calendar is first build in what matters most and then allow the gaps to be filled with the less important things.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with 100% of that. Yeah, the busy work, back end files, emails,
Oh gosh, text.
text.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I'd
Fires that
probably
come
add,
up.
I think I'd add one more into that,
What is
and
it?
which is, it's kind of like a knife. A knife is a great tool or
Mm,
something that'll cut you, depending upon
yeah,
which end of the handle you're holding, right?
that's right.
And I think social media. So social media is a great tool,
Yeah,
like a knife, when handled appropriately, right? When you got the business end pointed toward something you're trying to cut instead of the business end pointing toward you.
right.
And I think on social media that it can be a colossal busy work thing. I'm going
Yeah,
there and liking everybody's post, thinking that's actually going to do something to me, as opposed to using it as a tool to target, these either my past database or
sure.
high producing real estate agents. So, all right. So if I'm give me just as we close this up, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Give me one action item.
Well, the first thing I would do, the first thing I think about, Carl, is I would list out all of the activities you're currently doing today. And I would list them out, and then I would ask myself, is this a front end part of the equation or back end, and who can help me with this?
Mm,
So number one, I'd go in and I'd literally look at my, like, if you're really saying I'm overwhelmed, I've got to have a solution, because you know what happens, Carl, when we don't solve the problem of overwhelmed? Two things. For our families, they begin to resent our work because we give all of us and the best of us. And then when we
mhm,
come, we're completely drained. And
mm,
in a better word that I like to use is depleted. It means, man, I have nothing left to give. That's the challenge of living overwhelmed. So the only way to really get over it is this week, make a list of all the activities. Like, just take 30 minutes this morning or this afternoon or today and just list them all out. What did you do today? And try to do it in 15 to 30-minute blocks. And then you've got to ask yourself, I would divide it into to a couple of things. I would write in one column everything I'm doing, and then in the next column, Carl, I'd ask who could do this, because you know what I found. We typically live in environments that have underutilized resources. And what I mean by that is, like, if this is a back end, like chasing a condition, or even on pipeline meetings, I see people who are doing 5 pipeline meetings a week and they've got a pipeline of like 7 or 10 loans. When
Mhm.
really, if your meetings were just more effective, you could do Monday, Wednesday, Friday and get the same thing done. And so I would really evaluate it and say, is it a who can do this, number one? And then, like, the next thing would be, am I empowering my people, or am I saying, no, 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 don't worry about it, I'll go get it? Because that's what we tend to do. We're like, no, 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 if it's going to be done right, I'll just go do it. Well, my challenge to you would be, then you never solve the problem of giving yourself margin.
Mhm.
So list it all out, ask who can do this. And most of the time, there are people in and around you who can go chase the back end conditions, who can schedule the closing, who can follow up on trailing documents and submit them into underwriting, who can help communicate your Just Ask Tuesday update calls when they're updating both borrowers and you're focused on the agents. You'll be shocked when you do that to say, I'm doing a lot of things that there are people already close to me who could start doing on my behalf.
Yeah.
The next thing I would do is this. The most important thing that I think in your business life, if you'll put your 2 hours of outbound prospecting non-negotiable Monday through Thursday, and we use a tool called Call Stars. In my 8-week boot camp, I spend a whole week about building a livable calendar. And this is probably one of the most impactful parts, Carl. But do you know, in your business life, if the number one thing you got done was the outbound sales, which most of the time is not even a cold call, it's just a structure of touching your agents Monday, touching the loans in process with the intention of asking for the business on Tuesday, database calls, which is brilliant right now, especially teeing them up for refis on Wednesday, Thursday, pre-approved and looking. And if I did those 2 hours non-negotiable and then let the chaos hit me the rest of the day, Carl, you'd still win. Because what happens is the busy work knocks us off the selling, and the selling is what actually got us busy.
Mm. So ask me the same question I asked you a couple minutes ago. What's the
Carl, what
first
would
thing
you
you
do
would do?
first for somebody very practical?
See, you're much too humble to do this, so I'll do it for you. What I would do is I'd call Steve Kiles because, dude, I love your day one, get one. Day
Oh,
one, get one. Day
yeah.
one, get one. Day one that you're over at the Steve Kiles team, you get an assistant that very day. And this is not a new assistant. This is assistants that's done 100 files before they ever touched yours. This is a one that once you hand that loan over to them, once you get the disclosures out, they take it from start to finish, and which frees you up from all that wasted time, busy work, and all those most 90% of those emails that pop up is,
Oh, yeah.
hey, do we the bank statement, the appraisal, and the home inspection, all that. You should have somebody doing all that stuff for you. And you guys have a great team that do all that. So I know you're much too humble to do this. So I'm going to do it for you.
Hey,
So
we even send out the disclosures for you.
yep,
So
even that, right?
all
Even
you do
that.
is click a button.
And I heard you. You send somebody over and they mow my yard, they wash my car, like the whole 9 yards. So anyway, obviously a little tongue in cheek there. So somebody wants some more information about this and go, hey, tell me a little bit more about this or what it would look like. What should I do?
Yeah. Hey, listen, go to my calendar and let's do meet up with Steve. Book a time slot, and then we will literally. I'll just show you what we built here, and if it's a great fit, come join us. Or I'll just show it to you, and if you feel like, hey, I want to try to implement it where you're at, that you could do that as well. But man, I tell you what, meetupwithsteve.com. It's every 30 minutes on my calendar. Grab a time. Would love to show you that. Hey, you know what, Carl? We were just talking to Allison, who leads our operations team. And did you know that we have an 83% um, yes for loans that were turned down? So one of the cool things, and we hadn't, I don't think we've even talked about this, but whenever a loan comes in, and let's say it's declined because that you needed 2 years income or something popped up that was unexpected, and that loan gets declined. Did you know we have a committee of 4 people, one of them being the president of our company, and they look at every loan that an underwriter said, hey, looks like we're going to have to decline this loan, and they turn 83% of the no's into yeses.
That's
83.
that's dude. That's Unheard of.
But
You
listen,
know, I
how
always
many
always
times
feel
have
like
you ever? Hey, well, I was talking to a buddy of mine just literally yesterday, and he said he literally has somebody full time that is hired to do nothing but fight for every file he has going into underwriting to get him to turn over suspenses, turn over declinations. But he does so much volume. He has one person that does nothing but fight with underwriters. Brother, our underwriters are trying to make deals. Like when a deal is a no, you know what they're saying is it's the most refreshing thing. I know Frank and I talked about this a couple episodes back, but it's like I can't believe it's real where they're fighting for your yes. They understand the amount of work and energy and the time and the effort that you've invested to not only win that deal, but to win the agent and the partner, and that every yes absolutely matters. So they've been tracking it. 83% of the no's have been turned back into yeses. And it's remarkable, man. So you want to
that's an
learn more,
unbelievable
go to
story.
meetupwithsteve.com. I'd love to walk you through that.
Awesome. Meetupwithsteve.com. I love you, brother. Great talk. 83% of my no's turn into yeses. That's impressive. Man, I would use that to go meet up with agents and say, hey, have you had a
Oh,
turn
yeah.
down? Let me tell you how we approach that over
Let me tell you
here.
how it
So
works
great
around
message.
here.
So
Yeah.
meetupwithsteve.com. Appreciate you, brother.
All right, man. See you.